I'm going to show you how to set up OBS the right way for your stream. Maybe you think you have it set up right, but you're still dropping frames, have quality issues, or you're just setting it up for the first time. If you're new here, I'm Dapeach, and I've been streaming for years and making content on socials for even longer. I share stream tips here on TikTok and on Twitch, and I'm working to make this channel a great resource for all streamers. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and notification bell to get notified every time I share a new video to help you grow your stream. Okay, so you have OBS downloaded and installed. This is what it'll look like. If you just got it, or if you might have been using it for a little while already, it's okay. We'll go through all the settings now. Mine might look a little bit different because I have a Stream Elements plugin installed on top of OBS, but it won't affect any of the settings that we look at today. All right, so go down to settings down here. There's a bunch of categories that we'll look at. We'll go through each and every one of them to make sure you guys have the right settings. And even if you've played with some of them and you want to go back, revert to the right settings, I'll go through every single one of these checkboxes. So under general, this top tab, nothing really need to change here. I would do dark theme because it's nicer on the eyes, and automatically check for updates on startup for sure. I wouldn't recommend doing an update right before a stream when you open up OBS to go live. Probably do it after your stream or the next day, just in case there's some issue or audio issue or something. Maybe you need to reboot your computer just so that everything syncs in together. I would not recommend doing an update before going live. This next section is output. You want to make sure that you are showing a confirmation dialog when you start and stop streams. You don't want to be starting or stopping your stream by accident, so make sure you have these enabled. Everything else is unchecked, don't need that. For source alignment snapping, you can enable this. I set mine to 10, doesn't really matter. This is to move sources and things around on your OBS scene. Projector, everything's off, system tray enabled. Previews off, importers off, studio mode. This is all default stuff. You don't need to touch anything else here. Okay, when you go to stream, you can select from which service or which service you're going to be streaming to. So you have Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, all these guys. It's up to you where you're going to be streaming. So if you are streaming to Twitch like I am, you can connect your account and it'll ask you to log in, or you can use your stream key. I recommend just connecting your account and logging in. It's easier, faster. So this is what it'll look like once you've logged in. You can disconnect your account here if you want to log into another account for whatever reason. Enable bandwidth test mode. What this does, if checked, is you'll actually stream to Twitch, but you won't actually go live, and your followers will not get a notification that you're live. So turn it on, hit start streaming, and you can test your computer. See how things are going. There's a Twitch inspector that you can check to see how the quality is, the bitrate, and all of that. Make sure that your internet can handle the streaming, the gaming, or maybe even recording all at the same time. It's a good thing to test. Make sure you take this off, uncheck it before you go live for real. Otherwise, no one knows that you're actually live. Okay, and for Twitch chat add-ons, make sure you add Better TTV and Frankerface Z, a web browser extension that adds more emotes to Twitch. And I think they have it for YouTube now too. You'll also get your max video bitrate and audio bitrate settings. We'll use this for a little bit later. Okay, in the output section, output mode, simple. We don't want that. Let's go to advanced and I'll give you all the right settings. So there's a couple of tabs here: streaming, recording, audio, replay, buffer. So the first thing is audio track. What is this? You can set all of your audio sources to be sent to one specific track, which is track 1 usually. And this is what's going to be sent to your live stream. So everything that's happening live is being passed or processed through track 1. Okay. The difference between Twitch VOD track and audio track is if you enable this, notice how it automatically checks to number 2. That's because audio track is for what's happening when you're live, and Twitch VOD track is what you want people to hear when they go to watch back your VOD. So for example, if you don't want music to be playing, let's say you play music through Spotify, and you don't want that application's music or sound to be saved to your clips or to your VODs, you can enable the Twitch VOD track. And what you'll do is you'll enable all the audio sources on track 2, except for that application, in this case Spotify. For encoder, click on here and see if you have the option for NVIDIA NVENC. It still says new. It's been new for years now, but essentially if you have an NVIDIA graphics card that's new enough, then you can use the graphics card to process the encoding, which is way better on your system, and then you don't lose a lot of FPS in your gameplay. So I highly recommend going to NVENC. It's much smoother, better quality, and better on your system. For rescale output, this is what is going to be sent to your stream. Again, remember, we're in the streaming tab. So what quality or what resolution is going to be sent out to the stream. The reason why we want to check the rescale output is under the video settings tab. I'll show you a bit later, but rescale output for now, trust me, I'll show you in a second. Everyone has option, whether you're a not affiliate, or a Twitch partner, you can stream at 1920 by 1080p, but Twitch does not guarantee the transcoding options for non-partners. So what is transcoding? Transcoding is the quality settings, that little gear at the bottom of YouTube videos or Twitch videos or Twitch live streams that you can click and adjust the options from 1080p to 720p to 480p. That is different transcoding options. So if you're not a Twitch partner and you're streaming at 1080p, there's a chance that your viewers will only be able to see your 1080p stream. So if their internet can't handle 1080p stream, it's going to be an issue watching your stream because they can't back off the quality down to 720 or 480p. So that's why the kind of guideline that is recommended is to stream at 720p for affiliates and non-affiliates. And once you're a Twitch partner, then you can stream at 1920 by 1080 or 1080p resolution. But at the end of the day, I've seen affiliates streaming at 1080p and it works out fine. And I've seen partners streaming less than 1080p and it works out fine too. So again, it's up to you, your computer, and the kind of quality that you want and your computer can handle. One last note about these resolutions that I wanted to mention, you might be seeing some Twitch streamers streaming at some weird resolutions like I do, which is 936p. You might see 900p or 1008p. There's a bunch of different resolutions that you can send your stream out. One thing I want to emphasize is that your stream resolution 1280 by 720, these two numbers, they should be divisible by 8. That is because the way that encoding works is it breaks up the information, the data, into 8 by 8 pixel blocks. So if it is not divisible by 8, then it needs to create and make extra pixels to fill in the spaces that aren't there because you're not sending that resolution, and it just bogs down the system, bogs down the encoder. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's just way more efficient and way smoother for your encoder if the numbers are divisible by 8. I'll go ahead and put a chart on the screen right now, which will show all the different resolutions that are properly divisible by 8 between 720p and 1080p. You probably are not going to use anything besides 720 or 1080p, but a good middle ground is the 936p. The resolution is 1664 by 936. So you can use any one of these resolutions if you want to, depending on the quality that you want to send out, and they're all going to be good to go for your encoder. All the numbers in there are divisible by 8. You're good. Next up is rate control. You got a bunch of different options here. For rate control, you want to use CBR. CBR stands for constant bitrate. What this means and why you want to use it as a streamer is because if you go from a black screen to instant high motion gameplay, your encoder doesn't need to catch up and send a bunch of data to the stream and send more bitrate. Constantly sending the amount of bitrate, it's always ready for whatever changes, whatever motion or non-motion is being sent to the stream. In comparison to CBR, you have VBR, which is variable bitrate, which means it might send less or more bitrate depending on what's going on the screen. So if there's not much motion, the bitrate's going to come down and preserve bandwidth for you, which is very good for people that don't have good internet. But as a streamer, you don't want this, because if you go from low motion scene to a high motion scene, it needs to kick into overdrive and send more bitrate to kind of catch up, and now you're back to the proper bitrate amount that you were sending anyways. So just stay with CBR, constant bitrate. Choose one number and you're good to go. Next up is CQP. It stands for constant quantization parameter. Essentially, you set a certain CQ level or a level of quality, and it will maintain that quality regardless of the bitrate. It'll use as much or as little bitrate as it needs to maintain that level of quality. Setting it to 14 is essentially lossless quality, and going higher, 15, 16, 17, will reduce the quality. You could use this for recording, but I would not recommend it for streaming. The last rate is lossless, which is essentially very similar to CQP. It's just very high quality that's going to be compressed down anyways, so you don't want to be using this. At least now you know what everything does. CBR is the way to go. If you're using the X264 encoder, your options for rate control are CBR, so you want to be using that one. ABR and VBR are similar things, and constant rate factor or CRF is similar to the lossless. On the other side, It essentially maintains a certain level of quality by adjusting the bitrate as needed to maintain a certain type of quality. Next up is bitrate. Bitrate is the amount of data required to send a single second of video. So the higher the number, the better. What we can do is check the Twitch broadcast guidelines to see where we fit and what we should do for bitrate based on our resolution. So here's the broadcasting guidelines from Twitch. I'll have the link in the description below to this. If you're using NVIDIA NVENC specs, you can follow along each of these boxes. So if you're streaming at 1080p, 60 frames, here's your resolution. You can use your bitrate of 6,000 kilobits per second, and it even tells you all of your other OBS settings that you can set up. For most affiliates or non-affiliates, you might be in the 720p 60, and they're recommending a 4,500 kilobits per second. So the next question is, can your internet actually handle sending this type of bitrate? What you could do here is go to speedtest.net and run a speed test. Get your download speed and your upload speed. And upload speed actually is measured in Mbps, which is megabits per second. Let's say if you have 5 megabits per second, it's 5,000 kilobits per second. I would make sure that you have a lot of extra bandwidth for your upload speed. So if your upload speed is 10 megabits per second and you're streaming at 5,000 kilobits, you have a bandwidth room of 5 megabits per second. So if there's a lot of people at home and maybe they're also playing video games at the same time, or they're uploading things, or if they're working, maybe doing video conferencing calls or FaceTimes, this is going to take up uploading bandwidth as well. So be careful of the range. If you have something like 15 or 20 megabits per second or above, you're probably good to go at the 5,000 kilobits, 6,000 kilobits. You'll probably be fine. You'll have to test it out for yourself and see how it goes. See if you have any network issues while you're streaming. So for bitrate, I would recommend a 5,000 kilobits per second to start off. If you have a good internet connection and you want to send higher quality, I would go up to the 6,000. Remember, back here in our stream, we had a max video bitrate of 6,000 and our audio bitrate of 320. So you could technically go up to 6,000. That is the Twitch recommended anyways, is up to 6,000 kilobits per second. If you're streaming to YouTube or somewhere else, I'm not sure what their max bitrate settings are. You'll have to check those sites. I stream on Twitch, so I know that their max is 6,000. So 5,000 is a good starting point, especially if you're streaming at 720p. And what I want to mention is that resolution and bitrate kind of go hand in hand with quality. Resolution is the size and width and height in pixels of the image that you're sending out to Twitch or to any live streaming platform. Whereas your bitrate is the amount of quality, the amount of video data that is being sent every single second. So the higher the bitrate, the better the quality. Even though it's 720p, it's technically less than 1080p, you are still sending more quality, more information, more data to the stream. So higher the number here, the better, up to a max of 6,000 for Twitch. Next up, we got keyframe interval. What is a keyframe? What does it do? A keyframe is a frame of the video when it sends all of the data to show a complete image. Every other frame is actually only sending changes from frame to frame. So if you set this to 2 seconds, which is the recommended stream settings for Twitch, and most broadcasters in general actually, this means that every 2 seconds, an entire frame will be sent instead of just the differences from the previous frame. So ideally, you're thinking that you want this number to be as low as possible, which makes sense. Setting this to a higher number means that it will take longer for a viewer to join into your stream because it takes that many seconds to get a full frame and see what's happening on stream. So ideally you want to set this as low as possible, and the recommended number is 2. Some streaming services may go to 1, but for Twitch, they do recommend 2. Do not put it to 0. 0 means auto, which is actually 8.5 seconds, which is extremely long. Next up, we got preset. Preset is only available for NVIDIA NVENC encoders. So quality and max quality are going to give you the absolute best visual quality for your stream. If you go to max quality, it may be overload for your PC, for OBS. Stick with quality, you won't have any issues there. On the X264 side, you'll actually have this CPU usage preset. You want to be somewhere between very fast and medium as per the Twitch guidelines. Next up is profile. You got high, main, and baseline. Essentially, high is for high definition quality, main is for standard def quality, and baseline is essentially Skype call quality. So you'll want to choose high here. Next up is look ahead. What this does is it actually looks at the previous and next frame that's about to be rendered and decides if it needs to send a complete frame, similar to the keyframe intervals. This could be smart to actually have, but it actually takes up a lot of bitrate and takes up a lot of power. So don't recommend, it is not recommended for high motion streams. If you're playing like action games, shooting games, any kind of games, pretty much you don't want to have this on. If there's really like low motion games that you're playing, you could have this on. Honestly, it's not really recommended. Just leave it off. You're good to go. Next up is psycho-visual tuning. This again is for the NVIDIA NVENC encoder. This actually helps to boost visual performance on fast-paced games. Next, you got this GPU number 0. If you only have one graphics card, you're gonna have 0. If you have two graphics cards in your computer, you could choose between which graphics card is gonna actually be the encoder for this stream. So you could choose between 0 and 1. Most people probably only have one graphics card, so you could just set this to 0. You're good to go. And today's graphics cards in 2022 anyways are more than enough to game, stream, and even record all on one graphics card. And finally, here's max B-frames. What this does is it is kind of similar to the keyframe interval, where it will send a completely rendered frame to the stream, but instead of doing it on every 2 seconds, it'll do it as needed. Set this to 2 or set it to 4 if you're gonna be using look ahead. Next tab we got is recording. So the type, I just leave it as standard. Recording path, obviously where you want to save it. Now, recording format, you got a couple of formats in here. I highly recommend MKV. The reason why is because if you're recording video and your OBS crashes, computer crashes, power outage, whatever, there's some sort of corruption in the video, all of your recording that you've done up to that point is saved, is good to go. If you were to use a different file format like MP4, for example, it even tells you here, it will be unrecoverable. So if it gets corrupted, you power down your computer by accident, all that video footage is lost. So leave it as MKV. And I'm going to show you something later on that you can do to transcode, to switch this file from MKV into MP4. So then you can load it into your editing software. Next up is audio track. What this does is it can save multiple audio tracks to your recording. So when you're in an editor, you can make different independent changes to different audios. But once you set up all of your audio and your stream is good to go, you can come back here and enable which tracks you want to save independently. For example, track 1 is everything that's going to your live stream. So all audio, all compressed into one track. Track 2 could be only your microphone. Track 3 could be only your gameplay. Track 4 could be your voice chat or your music application. And now when you go to your editing software, you can see the individual tracks and you can edit them independently, raise the volume, lower the volume, whatever you need to do for your recording. Next is the encoder. If you use stream encoder, it's actually use the same settings as we did under streaming. You actually don't want that because there's different settings for recording as there is for streaming. So choose the graphics card. If you're using NVENC, use NVENC. For recording, you don't want to rescale the output like we do with streaming. With streaming, you'll be at 720 or 936 or maybe even 1080p. But with recording, you want the highest possible quality. And that's why we leave this unchecked, because it's going to be based off your base resolution, which I'll show you in a second under video. You'll have the rate control on as CBR. What you'll do instead of 2,500 is go to 20,000 is a good starting point. Or if your PC can handle it and you have good storage, because these files can add up, you can go to 40,000. The other thing is that I haven't used yet is CQP, and you'll want to set this to a level of 14. This is essentially your lossless quality. So the absolute best quality that you can get, 14. Any lower than this, it's just way too much. You're not going to notice any visible change. The lower the number, the better the quality, and 14 is what is the recommended number. You could probably go to 15, 16, 17 and not notice much of a quality difference. What I like to do is actually just keep things at CBR 20,000. That's what's good for my computer. That's what I've tested, and I'm happy with this quality. Try this for yourself if you don't have a lot of storage, and go from there. Keyframe interval, I set this to 2 as well. Quality high, and all the settings the same as streaming. So the big change is the 20,000 or 40,000 kilobits per second. Next up is audio. This audio track, remember back in our stream settings, it said the max we could do is 320. So go ahead and change all of your tracks to 320. Even if you're only going to be using track 1 to send to your stream and record that as well, just set them all to 320 now. You're already here. And if in case one day you start recording with multiple tracks, you already have the higher quality bitrate. And finally, we have replay buffer. What replay buffer does is it records what's being outputted for a certain time that you give it. So 20 seconds, it could be 60 60 seconds, whatever it is. And when you hit a hotkey, it will save that amount of time, those past 60 seconds. And you can actually use this to show a replay on stream, which is pretty cool. Next up is the audio section. So sample rate, make sure it's at 48 kilohertz. This is your standard audio these days. Down here in global audio devices, check your mic and make sure that it's plugged in and set it to your mic audio. So if you're just starting out and you want to get going to streaming and you don't really care about splitting out all of your audio, you can actually set your desktop audio to your headphones or to your speakers, whatever you're using. What this does is it'll take all the audio that you hear and put it into one source called desktop audio, and it'll send that out to the stream. So if you want to record and split out the different audios, like I mentioned earlier, gameplay audio, music audio, you won't be able to do that with this. Next up is under meters. Use the decay rate of fast and the true peak meter type. Takes higher CPU usage, is really not much. Just use this, and when you see your audio levels and audio meters going up and down, you'll have a much better understanding, a live feed of what's happening with your audio. Next is the video category. Your base canvas resolution is for your monitor. Whatever your monitor resolution is at, that should be your base canvas, and your output scaled resolution should match your monitor if it's 1080p. Otherwise, you could just set it to 1080p. Or whatever else you want to output to if you're doing something kind of kooky and weird, but I just leave it the same. And the reason why is because back in my output recording, I did not rescale it. So under my video, output scale is going to now record at 1080p, but my stream output is going to rescale at 720p. So back in video, the downscale filter, bilinear and area are not really to be used. They're kind of blurry. Bicubic and Lanczos are your best bet, and Lanczos is the sharpest, the best quality. So just use this. If you're noticing some issues, this is something you can back off to bicubic. I would probably go to output and reduce the bitrate before I did any other changes first, because bitrate does have a big effect. Next is your FPS. You want to go to stream at 60. So now you're streaming at 720p, 60 frames per second, or 936 or 1080p and 60 frames. Hotkeys is next. You can set up hotkeys on your keyboard, numpad, or macro pad. That'll change scenes, mute your mic, stop, start streaming, recording. I don't have this set up because I have an Elgato Stream Deck. I'll be making a video about that. So make sure you're subscribed to get notified when I make a video on that. Under advanced, there's not much to change here. You can leave everything good to go. This is your file name formatting for when you record videos. You could change this to something like a Twitch stream or something like that. And if you click out actually and just hover over, it'll give you all of the information and how to use the different variables to make some cool names for yourself when you're recording. Okay, here's the setting I mentioned earlier to automatically remux the MP4. So if you're recording an MKV, like I said earlier to do, at the end of your recording session, a little loading bar will pop up and it'll remux or transcode to MP4. Okay, and I'm going to show you something quickly here. Let's say you had to close OBS, you had to cancel out of that little remux. It's okay, don't worry about it. You can come up here to File, Remux Recordings, and go and find that file, that MKV file, click it, and now you can load and push it to an MP4 file. Very, very cool. There's not much else to do inside of advanced. There's stream delay, which you could enable if you are doing like a Twitch Rivals or some sort of competition or tournament where you don't want people cheating, watching your screen. If you're just streaming regular, don't have this on. I do recommend having automatically reconnect enabled. Set this to 5 or 10 seconds. And this makes sure that if your internet does go down every 5 seconds, it's going to try and get your broadcast back online to Twitch. And there's another setting in Twitch that you should have enabled for this. And that's pretty much it for the settings in OBS. Make sure that you hit apply down here. Otherwise nothing will save and you're good to go. If you don't understand the back end of OBS, then you can't fix any issues or improve the quality of your streams. But the thing is, you still have a big problem because like I just mentioned, even Twitch has a bunch of settings that weren't set up right for some streamers that I've helped out, which could have caused some big problems. So to make sure that you don't make those mistakes too, watch this video right here and guarantee that all your settings are set up right. Good luck, happy streaming, and I'll see you in the next one.